Good morning, madam.
Yeah. So, Melissa, before we start the session, here we have a great educators teaching in different parts of my region. Many of them are very active participants in any teaching training sessions. And moreover, they always explore the different opportunities to teach their students innovatively. They are so keen. You can understand it is Sunday today. They are sparing their time, even Sunday, for the well-being, for the betterment of their students. You can understand the determination, the dedication, the commitment. So they're all great teachers, undoubtedly. So before we start the session, could you please briefly introduce yourself so that I allow some of my teachers to interact with you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Hi, my name is Dr. Melissa Farrow, and I am a science teacher and STEM innovator from Caldwell, Idaho. Idaho is on the west side of the United States. I'm not directly on the west coast. I'm a couple hours away from that, but I'm in a very rural part of our country. I live in an area that has a lot of farms and a lot of agriculture. I have been a teacher for the last 22 years, and I have actually taught in the same science classroom at the middle school level, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So that would be like 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kids for those last 22 years. I teach physical science, life science, earth and space science, STEM innovation, and STEM design. I also am a huge advocate, as I'm going to talk later tonight, about outdoor education and place-based citizen science. So I also take students on a lot of outdoor field experiences. We travel to Yellowstone National Park. We travel to Tampa, Florida. We have partnerships with our local wildlife refuges. So I'm really big into getting my students into outdoor education and getting them to actually see science happening.
Yeah. Satyanarayan garu, please mute your microphone. Satyanarayan garu. So I request our colleagues, please go ahead and ask the questions.
I'm sorry, you cut out there for a second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, I am requesting my colleagues to interact with you.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
So who is going to ask the first question? Saujanya ma'am. Okay. So in fact, they are, I think, preparing the questions. I think they are getting ready to ask the questions. So meanwhile, Melissa, tell me something about your innovations, especially your innovative activities in your classroom, just as briefly as you can, so that the other teachers also going to ask the same question. And just for time being, would you like to briefly explain about innovative activities?
Can I ask a question, sir?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Very nice
Good morning
to meet you. Good morning, India. Very happy to meet you in this session. And I came to know that you're a coordinator of STEM. So what exactly the activities depends on club activities, STEM. So can you please tell me in detail about your STEM activities?
Yeah, I'd love to. One of the things we try really hard to do in my school district is to provide different types of opportunities. Recognizing that students have different interests and students might want to be involved with different things. So we do have some student clubs that students are able to participate in. We have a competitive robotics team where the students build robots and then they use those robots to compete against each other. We have a partnership with our local wildlife refuge where our students go out once a year and they collect data on water quality and water temperature and things like oxygen concentration in the water. And then we actually upload all of that data to an international water quality database. So our students are able to use it to understand the area that we live in, but also share that data with scientists around the world who are doing water quality projects. I come from an area that is really low socioeconomically. All of my students are on free and reduced lunch. So we're 100% free and reduced lunch, 100% poverty. And about 70% of my students are Hispanic, many of them first generation Hispanics who are just learning English. And so we want those students to have opportunities to really see themselves being scientists and engineers rather than just reading about it in a textbook. So often when you read in a textbook, you see, I jokingly tell my students, you see dead white guys, right? Like white guys are the only people who can do science, and my students aren't white guys. So my students need to actually be the ones doing the science. So some of the programs we have give our students opportunities to actually do that. We take them to Florida once a year, and that also gives them an opportunity to see like a different part of the country. So students who want to be able to like compare different parts of the country, we do dissections with the students. And then in our elementary schools, our K-5 students, our younger students, we try and have opportunities for them to, I'm actually building a bunch of kits right now to put out into all of the different elementaries across our district to give the students the materials that they need to be able to do experiments in their classrooms. Because right now, most of our elementary classrooms don't have the materials to even do some basic science experiments.
Very nice, ma'am. I think you have some STEM clubs in your school.
We have engineering clubs. We have some competition teams. Yeah, we have like a variety of different clubs.
Okay. Very nice. What are the other activities that your club usually do? Is there any other outings along with your club members for participation in science activities?
Is there a way that I could share my screen? I've got some pictures of some of the different activities that our students have done.
You can, Melissa, you can do it now.
Oh, there we go. Sorry, my computer's being kind of slow. There we go.
No problem.
So one of the things I really feel strongly about is that our students' lives are really shaped by their surroundings. Our students, the way they interact with their world, the way they interact with STEM is really different depending on where they live. So I try and help my students really find their place in Idaho. We spend a lot of time doing outdoor club activities. It's called place-based learning, and it gives the kids chances to look at citizenship skills and environmental education and nature-based activities, as well as things like just how to get along with other people and knowing where you're at in the state, like geography. Three of the really important projects that I do with my students are Expedition Yellowstone, the Future City Engineering Competition, and our Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge Partnership. Sorry, I'm kind of skipping a couple of slides here. Expedition Yellowstone is an opportunity for my kids to go. It's about 11 hours away from us, and we go in the winter time. And my students have the opportunity to put on snowshoes and learn to snowshoe. They have an opportunity to look at the bones of the different animals that live in Yellowstone. We talk about things like how predator animals have their eyes facing forward and how prey animals have their eyes on the side. So the kids get to look at like skulls and determine whether the animal is a predator animal or a prey animal. We actually go into the hot springs, and the kids take water testing from those hot springs and look at some of the variables like pH and try and figure out what types of bacteria are living in those hot springs. our students get an opportunity to really look at geology and biology while we're over there. This is a 4-day long trip that we take every year in March. The next activity that my club does is a national engineering competition called the Future City Engineering Competition. The pictures on the screen are from a competition a couple of years ago, and the theme was waste not, want not. So the students had to think about what happened to their trash after they got rid of their trash. When you finish eating your food, where does that waste go? The students have to write an essay talking about what a city could look like 100 years in the future. They have to imagine what types of discoveries and inventions. How do people travel? Do we have flying cars? How do people entertain themselves? Do we take space trips to the moon for fun? You can see in the middle pictures, the students have to actually build a model out of their city. So they have to use the mathematical concept of scale and dimension and proportion. And they also have to build the model out of all recycled and reused materials. So we spend a lot of time looking for bottles and cans and boxes that they can build their model out of. And then they have to give an actual presentation to real life engineers, which I think is one of the most important parts of this project that my STEM club does, because it gives my students a chance to actually talk to adults. I think so often, even when we have our students give oral presentations in class, they're only talking to other students and maybe their teacher. And being able to talk to real engineers gives them the opportunity to share their knowledge with people who are actually working in the field of engineering. And I think that oftentimes those engineers are surprised by the really awesome things that are going on in our students' brains. When we do this project, I try and include some types of field trips. So in this picture in the upper right, you can see that I actually took my students to our local solid waste disposal dump. And we actually looked at what happens when the trash can leaves your house. How do we deal with that trash? And it turns out in my area, we put it in a giant pile and cover it with dirt, which is a really great solution. And my students were amazed, like, why are we doing this? Why isn't there a better way to deal with our trash? So I think it really gets the students thinking about those real life problems that they have to deal with when they leave our classrooms. We're not just training our students to do science, we're training our students to be citizens, to be members of our community. So the Future City Project is one that my STEM club does that I think is really important. And then the last one, this is the one I was mentioning where my students collect the water quality data, and we actually upload it to a real global, it's not just a local, but an actual global database. So scientists all over the world are able to use this data that we're collecting every year in April. So every year in April, we're going out to our local wildlife area, and we're collecting this data that scientists can use. And then my students use it as well. We host a giant STEM club night every year in May for our entire school district. And we invite in all of the parents, and they come in and they look at the work that the students are doing. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner how proud my students are when they get to be the scientist and they get to be the engineer, rather than just watching a video about someone or maybe, reading about it in a book somewhere. So these are some of the projects that my STEM club does.
Fantastic, ma'am. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Ramesh,
Can you please tell Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge, what it means exactly?
Can you say that again?
Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge. What activities behind in it? Can you please tell me one more time?
Yeah, when we're out at Deer Flat National Wildlife Refuge, we are doing water quality testing, and we have the students compare a spot on the refuge where people spend a lot of time at the boat docks. There's a section on the refuge, it's a big lake near where we live, and people use it for boating and for picnicking. And so there's a section that has a lot of concrete and a lot of picnic areas, and it's where the boats drive down to the lake. So we look at what's the water like there. And then we also test a section of refuge that people don't really go to. It's got a lot of grass and reeds and plants in it. And it's way away from where the people are. And so the water gets more filtered. It's a healthier, natural environment. And we test the water there. And we do both abiotic testing. So we look at the water chemistry, like the pH and the dissolved oxygen and the nitrogen levels. We also do biotic testing. So the kids actually survey the macroinvertebrates, the little bugs and insects that are living in the water. They scoop them out. That's what the girls are doing in this picture here in the middle. They have nets and they dip the nets through the water, and we scoop out and we count the different types of each kind of animal that live there. Some bugs do really well with polluted areas. They can survive there. And some bugs have to have really clean water in order to survive. So we kind of do some mathematical calculations. We do a ratio and we compare the pollution tolerant ones to the pollution sensitive ones. And it always turns out that the area with more plants, the area that's further away from people, has way more of those sensitive bugs that need clean water. And the area down by the boat docks, some years we don't even find any bugs. Some years there are no insects at all in the water. So it's a good opportunity for the kids to look at lots of different aspects of how you tell how good a water quality, how good an ecosystem's water is.
Okay, TVS
Very
Ramesh.
nice.
Okay, TVS Ramesh Garu, are you there? Ramesh Garu?
Sir, yes, sir.
Sir, could you please ask the question, sir?
Okay, sir. Respected madam, this is Ramesh, working in curriculum and textbooks department. I have been associated with the textbook development activity, but I would like to ask one question, ma'am.
Okay.
Is there any specific activities for early graders? That means class 1 to class 5th graders. Is there any activities to create environmental awareness among children at primary level, ma'am?
That's a good question. That's actually what I'm working on right now, is developing more activities for our elementary students.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a fantastic partnership with our local military base, and they put on an activity once a month for our kindergarten through kindergarten through 5th graders, called Starbase. And they bring our kids onto our local military base, and the kids look at lots of different kind of aerospace, astronomy concepts. The kids build rockets out of paper. They make rocket cones that they have to try and test out different variables, give the kids an opportunity to kind of experiment and see what happens if I put clay in the tip of the rocket, what happens if I put pennies in the tip of the rocket, what happens if I just make the tip of the rocket out of paper. And then we let the kids launch those rockets and see who can make the rocket that goes the furthest, who can make the rocket that goes the highest. So one of the things we do a lot with our little kids, with our younger kids, is come up with experiments where the kids have a lot of control. The kids have opportunities to change things and test things. So giving the students choice in the activity really gets them thinking like a scientist. Even if it's something as simple as exploring Newton's laws of motion. What happens if I put more mass? What happens if I put more force? So it can be a really simple activity, but giving students opportunities to say, I want to try and make it go far, or I want to try and make it go high. I want to try and change the nose on the rocket. I want to try and change the fins on the rocket. That type of activity is really beneficial for our little kids, because it again, going back to what I was saying earlier, it makes them the scientist, it makes them the engineer. They have the choice, they get to play with things. I actually have a slide. Let me back up here just a second. There's a cartoon in the United States. I don't know if you have this in India or not. The cartoon is called Mrs. Frizzle and the Magic School Bus. And it's a crazy teacher, and she takes her kids on this magic school bus and they go all around and explore science. But in every time she does the show, she says, take chances, make mistakes, get messy. And that's kind of what we think of when we have our younger students doing science and engineering activities, is giving them the opportunity to make a mistake, helping them understand that failure is part of the process of being a scientist and an engineer, not something to be scared of. I think so often in school, we teach the kids that failure is bad. If you get a failing grade, that's bad. If you fail on an assignment, that's bad. And so we expect our kids, no, don't fail, don't fail, don't fail. And in reality, I think as science teachers,
Yes.
as engineering teachers, we want them to fail. We just don't want them to fail and stop. We want them to fail and keep moving, fail and try something new. What did you learn from your failure? So those are the types of activities we try and do with our little kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ramesh Garu. Are there any other
Thank you, sir.
teachers? Are there any other?
Shall I say?
Yes, ma'am.
Shall I say?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Good morning, Dr. Melissa. This is Lakshmi from Andhra Pradesh.
Hi.
Hi. Can I ask you one question? You said Idaho classroom. Could you please extend your views? What is meant by Idaho? Am I spell that? Am I pronounce that Idaho correctly?
Close.
And what is meant-
Idaho.
Idaho.
Yeah,
Idaho.
like Idaho.
I want to know what is meant by Idaho and what are the activities that you have taken in that Idaho classroom.
So what do you want to know about an Idaho classroom? Like who my students are, or?
Idaho means we don't know,
Oh.
and we never heard about that Idaho also. That's why I want to know what is meant by Idaho.
Yes.
And what, yeah, in Idaho, finding your place in Idaho, you said like that, na? So that means, is that a place?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. So Idaho is a state in the United States. So if you look on the map here in the upper right-hand corner, that's a map of the United States. Idaho is in green. That's the state that I live in.
Nice, nice, nice.
And so
I thought that this is a classroom.
Yeah, no, it's the whole state. And then I'm
Okay.
actually from the, there's a dot here on the map that says Nampa, N-A-M-P-A. I'm right next to that. My city is right next to that. So we're on what's called the Snake River. The Snake River is a very famous river that runs right next to our town. And then we're right in between two sets of mountains. We have mountains to the north of us, and we have mountains to the south of us.
Nice, ma'am. Nice.
Okay,
Very
okay.
nice.
Thank you for that question. That was a great question. I'm sorry I did not make that clear.
Okay, okay, no problem, no problem. But I thought that this is a type of classroom which we are dealing with our students. That's why I asked.
That is a good question. Yes.
Yeah. Nice, ma'am. Nice. And your activities are really fantastic. And we enjoyed the activities you have taken and you are implementing in your classroom. And one more thing I want to ask you is it possible to a class of strength of about 40 students or 50 students to make all the students to involve in these activities?
That's a good question, because some of these activities that I'm talking about, I do with small groups of students, but most of them I do with my whole class. My classes have 35 students in them. My class size is about 35 students. And when we're doing these activities, all of the students are doing them. If I go forward to that slide, looking at the Future City project, when we do the Future City project, there's different deliverables, different parts of the project that have to be turned in. And so another really great thing that this project gives my students is a look at like workflow. What does a project look like when you do a project in the real world with other people? I think a lot of times when we do a project in school, it's the student works by themselves or the student works with one partner. But in the real world, if you go work for a big company, the people work in different departments. So the essay team is about 10 students, and then the model building team is about 10 students, and they have to work on the same theme. They have to work on the same project. They have to communicate with each other. So the essay team has a group leader and the model team has a group leader. And these two students have to talk to each other and make sure that if the essay talks about flying cars, that the model has flying cars in it. So it gives the students a lot of opportunity to work in small groups, but be part of a bigger project so that I can have 35 students working on this project together at once. When we go out to Deer Flat, we actually take our entire 7th grade class at once. So we take 250 students out there. And so we split them up and we have a group that goes over and tests at the pond. We have a group that tests at the boat dock. So a lot of it is you take a large group of students and give them jobs, but then it's really important to help them understand that they're still part of a bigger project. They're still part of a bigger class, and they have to talk and communicate with each other. I feel like that's a really important real world skill that even if they decide to not be a scientist when they grow up, if they decide to go be an architect, or they decide to go be an accountant and deal with money, or they go work at a bank, they still have to work with other people, and they still have to think about what's my part and how does my part work with their part, and how are we all working together in this big project. So I actually like working on these projects in big groups rather than in small groups.
Very nice, ma'am. Excellent. Good answer. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any more tips, please?
There's a question in the chat box that I want to answer if you don't mind.
Yes.
Somebody on the Galaxy A51 phone wanted to know about techniques to help students learn English, which I think is a great question because in my town, we have a lot of students who speak Spanish. We have a lot of students who come from homes that they don't have a lot of books. They don't talk to adults very often. And so school is the only place where they're hearing English. And so we have a lot of conversations in my school about how to help students learn English. Even our students who are native English speakers don't speak very good English because they don't read books and they don't talk to adults, and their English skills are really low. So we're constantly talking about how do you improve students' English skills. And one of the tools we use a lot with our students is pictures, putting pictures behind words. There's something we do in my classroom called sketchnoting. And sketchnoting is where the students have to take notes that are half pictures and half words. So instead of just doing traditional note taking that has lots of words in it, lots of English, lots of writing, my students are doing pictures and words together. Let me grab a picture really quickly of what that looks like so I can show you sketchnoting, because we found that it really helps our students who don't speak English to be able to understand ideas better. That's a video. I don't want to show a video. So here's a picture. I just Googled sketchnoting really quickly because my students are actually working on a sketch note right now, but none of them have turned it in yet. So I don't have a picture of it to show you. But for example, this one here in the corner about COVID-19, you'll notice that some of it is words, but some of it is pictures. And we tell the students, you don't have to be an artist. It's not about making a beautiful piece of art. It's not about perfect drawings. It's about putting pictures that will help you remember the words. So you can see here that it doesn't have lots and lots of words on it. It's got main ideas. It's got connectors like arrows and lines that help link different things together. Here's another one where the person's doing pictures and then some different hearts and some circles with some arrows. There's some different colors in it. So sketchnoting is something that we use a lot to help our students develop their English skills, because they don't have to use just words. They can connect words with pictures in a way that makes more sense inside their brain. And this works with little kids who are just learning English, but it also works with middle school and high school students. Because even at the middle school and high school level, it's still really important for them to be connecting their words with pictures and images that help them remember them. There's actually a lot of research to back up that this is a really great way to help students learn English. And science, because science is almost like a whole different kind of language. The words we use like photosynthesis and cellular respiration and mitochondria, we use a lot of really big fancy sounding words. Another thing that I like to do a lot with my students is talk to them about how Spanish, because most of my students are speaking Spanish, how Spanish actually is really closely connected to science. So we do a lot of breaking words down into prefixes and suffixes, so the kids can see that the word that they know in Spanish is actually really close to the science word. I encourage my students who speak Spanish to think of themselves as scientists, because Spanish is a lot closer to a lot of science words than English is. It's actually easier for somebody who speaks Spanish to learn a lot of science words because of the Latin connection than it is for somebody who speaks English to learn those science words. So those are a couple of the techniques that I use to help my students learn English when we're in a science classroom.
Excellent, excellent.
So any more participants, any more questions, please?
Sketchnoting is also very nice.
Excuse me, madam. Namaste.
Good morning.
This is Srividya from Andhra Pradesh. Madam, is it useful STEM program to teach our school children, high school children?
So with our high school students, we start doing a lot of career-focused STEM programs. So we have what we call career technical education, and we have our students who are actually starting to work on programs that might help them prepare for a job. We have them still doing, we still have a competitive robotics team at our high school level. So the students are building robots and using those robots to think about design processes and engineering concepts. And then we have our students doing some nursing classes to start thinking about how does biology actually work in the real world? What would this mean for me for a career? So our focus at the high school level is to start taking those STEM classes and connecting them to real world application and giving our students ways to start getting out into careers, doing observations, picking up certifications and skills that they need to be able to get a career when they graduate.
Okay, thank you very much, madam. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, shall I ask one question?
Sure.
Ma'am, I want to know, in STEM, science, maths, engineering, and other subjects are there. Is a single teacher handling all these sessions, or any other subject teachers, ma'am? Is it a collaborative activity or activity conducted by the single teacher? How this activity is being implementing, ma'am?
Unfortunately, in my area right now, most of the STEM programs are being run by either the science teachers or the like engineering career teachers. I really would like to get to a point where we are more collaborative. I would really like to get to a point where we were working together. We do have a high school that's not too far away from us that is a STEM high school. So the whole high school is focused on STEM. And so instead of taking a traditional English class to earn their high school English credit, they are taking a class in technical writing. They're learning how to write scientific papers. They're learning how to write engineering manuals. They're learning how to write more of a technical application rather than maybe in a more traditional high school, they'd be doing a creative writing class or an informational writing class. So that we do have some high schools that are exploring that idea. I'm looking forward to being able to do more of that in my own district, but we don't yet.
And one more point I want to clarify, ma'am. Actually, most of the students are show their interest to participate in activities. If we ask them to explain those things in a written format, they feel something inconvenient. How you overcome this particular challenge, ma'am? If you ask the students to make a write-up, there is a language problem or something, some problems are there. How you overcome this challenge?
I think that a great tool that we have available to us right now is video. I'm sure your students in India, like my students here in America, are very interested in platforms like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, like social media, right? That's where they're at, that's what they're engaged with. So I actually try and use that as the hook to get them to start thinking about, there's actually a quote from a show in America called Mythbusters. It's a science show, it's about engineers. And they say the only difference between doing science and screwing around is whether or not you write it down. So that idea of documenting, right? You can't just do the fun part of science. You have to go in and write it up afterwards. You have to write down your conclusions. You have to communicate to other people. And sometimes jumping right into writing paragraphs is really intimidating for students. So I have my students use a platform called Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a free video recording platform. And so I put my topic on Flipgrid, and then the students go into the topic and they record a 90-second video, and they have to explain what their claim is, what evidence they have to support their claim, and what the reasoning is behind their claim. And I find that when I let them do it verbally first,
so Melissa, sorry to interrupt you. Actually, I am trying the free Zoom session right now. So could you please reconnect again one more time so that some other questions you can answer. So
yeah,
I request all the participants reconnect again, because only a few seconds left right now, so that we can proceed with some other questions. Thank you so much.
Okay,